Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to How 23andMe Changed My Entire Life by Dr. Rachel Southard, D.O. I took a quick look at the channel. She seems to be a gynecology and fertility doctor, which I thought that works perfectly because people always mix up genealogy with gynecology, and it's like, no, very different. I'm really hopeful that this is going to be an interesting story about her discovering family through 23andMe. Being that she's a doctor, it's also possible that this might be more about the medical side of things, and maybe 23andMe gave her a hint of, hey, there's this medical thing that you should look into, which is one of the benefits of doing the medical stuff. But always with the medical stuff with these DNA tests, you need to understand that these are not medical grade tests. If you want truly medical grade DNA testing, you need to go to a proper geneticist and doctor that handles this kind of stuff. But these tests can certainly give you a hint of, hey, you might have something you want to look into. I don't think I'm really going to say much else. I've just jumped right into the video.
My name is Rachel, and I am an OBGYN resident physician. I am in year 1, so I'm an intern, and I have quite the story for you, and I already have chills just thinking about this. About 5-6-ish years ago, 23andMe changed my entire life, and I had no idea that a saliva sample would have such a big impact on my life. I had gotten the 23andMe kit as a gift. It was just for fun. I wanted to explore my genetics and see where they came from and whatever else comes with genetic testing, not expecting anything to come from it. The results were...
I should say that is a very common thread that I hear with people that have these big life-changing discoveries, especially when they aren't expected, is that, the DNA test was, a gift from a friend. And while I, as a genealogist, absolutely love people gifting DNA tests to people, because the more people that test, the more we can learn and build our trees and expand our knowledge with DNA. But at the same time, when you do give someone a DNA test, should come with a little disclaimer of, hey, when you take this, there is the possibility that this may completely upend everything you know about yourself. There's the possibility that your parents may not be your parents. There may be the possibility that your parents may not be the children of their parents. There's a lot of things that can happen. Plus there's also, with the medical stuff, I think all these sites have some sort of a disclaimer thing before you go into it. But with the medical thing, it's just one of those things that where you may learn information that may be very unhappy news, I guess would be a way to say it. So if you are planning to gift something like a DNA test to friends or family, definitely just say, hey, by the way, although I guess that is kind of a weird thing to say when you're like, hey, here's a DNA test, but just be careful, you might learn some crazy stuff. It's a little scary to say that to someone that you're giving that gift to, but it's something that should be known, informed consent, as people like to say. So let's continue.
Available for me to open on Christmas Eve, and during our annual Christmas Eve family dinner, I was like, well, they're available, let me open them and go over the results with my family, because why not? So my mom is Mexican, and then my dad is German, Irish, Italian, Austrian type mix. And then so when I opened the results, my results and breakdown didn't exactly align with what my parents had told me. Like there was obviously a lot of the origin from like Mexico and Spain, all of that stuff. But then the other side, like the white side of me, did not really align. So I was like, okay, interesting. On the app, you can select to be connected with other members who have taken 23andMe that share genetics with you, and you have to sign a bunch of agreements.
I kind of stopped it a little later than I wanted to, but I just wanted to see what she was going to say, if it applied to what I kind of want to reference before. But with her admixture, and she was saying, her mom's Mexican, her dad came from, I think, what was it, mostly German, maybe something else.
That is German, Irish, Italian.
Okay, so German, Irish, Italian. So I should mention with the admixture percentages, when you do those and you come from a European background, especially a mixed European background where, what she said, German, Irish, Italian. Well, with those three, each three of those are ancestries that correlate to lots of other European ancestries as well as to each other. But by having a mixture like that, and especially having a mom also coming from a Mexican ancestry who, as she mentioned, had some indigenous Mexican, but also had European, which is typical for people who are Mexican, is they're going to have European ancestry. Some will have African ancestry, and some even have different forms of Asian ancestry. But for the European ancestry, that mixture between both her mom and dad's side means that she's probably going to get a lot of breakdowns of European that may not make sense. Now, that's assuming that she doesn't go into what I think she is, where she's going to say the matches said something very different from what she knows on her family side. So we'll see what she says there. But in terms of the admixture, I do know that a lot of people that will come from European backgrounds will get their admixture results and then take it really badly because it doesn't really match up with what they know. But when you understand these DNA tests, then it does match up a lot better. So, like a lot of people with English ancestry are probably going to get Scandinavian ancestry and Northwestern European ancestry, including French and German readings, or even possibly Iberian readings or Italian readings, because you're just looking geographically that a lot of those population groups do have connections to each other. So I guess I just wanted to add that so that people that are watching this aren't thinking that, oh, if I get one of these, DNA tests and the admixture doesn't really match exactly with what I think it should be, that, okay, it must mean I have some crazy thing going on in my background. You need to kind of learn a bit more about how the admixtures are created and precision and recall numbers for each population group, which are basically accuracy estimates in a sense. So with each population group, there's kind of a different accuracy of how good they are at reading that. So main takeaway is just don't read the admixture and jump to big conclusions. Obviously, if something seems odd and something stands out, then, you want to look further into it, but understand these tests before you make any huge jumps to conclusions.
When I opened the results, my results and breakdown didn't exactly align with what my parents had told me. Like there was obviously a lot of the origin from like Mexico and Spain, all of that stuff. But then the other side, like the white side of me, did not really align. So I was like, okay, interesting. On the app, you can select to be connected with other members who have taken 23andMe that share genetics with you. And you have to sign a bunch of agreements because what you see cannot be unseen. And these connections are real, they're legit, and they could be life-changing. And so I was like, okay, whatever, I'll click it because maybe there's just some long-lost cousins, nothing crazy. So, and I think I even remember asking my parents, like, no one has any secrets, right? Because they might populate on here. And they're like, no. So I selected that, and lo and behold, I had a bunch of half-siblings populate. 23andMe was saying that these people shared X amount of genetics with me, and they're likely to be my half-sibling and likely to be my half-sibling. And I had a few on there, and I looked at my parents, and I was like, so who has the secret life? Because these people are allegedly my half-siblings. And my parents looked so confused. They were just like, no, we don't have any other children, and like none of us have any other children.
I wonder if this is a IVF case or something that has to do with fertility. Basically, it has to do with a lot of the stuff that was going on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and probably even to the 90s, probably even today, of different sperm doctors and stuff using their own samples. There was even a huge documentary on Netflix all about stuff like this, about one case of it, but there's a lot of different cases. And I actually just answered a question in one of my live streams the other day from someone who said, I have all of these genetic matches, I have like 15,000 matches. Is that because of the endogamy or because I have 20 plus half siblings because my father was a sperm donor? And I was like, oh, well, actually, it really is the endogamy, but that I'm sure that half siblings add a bit to it. So I wonder if that's the case, because that kind of seems to be leading to it, especially if the parents don't know. I know in a lot of those cases, what happened was that the father thought that they were using his own sperm. I'm guessing that might be the case, but I guess I'd be a bit surprised, especially if they know that she works in this field in fertility. And so I would think that, if that was the case, they would say, oh, well, by the way, this, unless it is possible that either they didn't know that someone else's sperm was being used, or they didn't fully understand how things were worked. I don't know. I guess we'll
it's
see
just
the story.
You guys. I don't know who those people are. I think it must be an error. And I believe my parents. I have no reason not to believe them. And so I was like, okay, this must be like a really weird error. Like, what are the odds? But maybe this is just an error. Like, I just brushed.
And I should say, these types of errors don't happen. Now, when we get genetic matches for DNA tests, we use the term false positive as a way to say someone who's a DNA match that really isn't a match. There is a more technical term of IBS, which is identical by state, which then some genealogists even go further and say, well, actually that covers multiple things. It's IBC, identical by chance, as opposed to IBD, identical by descent. So all of those terms just mean the DNA is identical because of, so when it's identical because of descent, means your DNA is the same with somebody else because you descend from the same ancestors. If it's IBC, identical by chance, it means that the DNA is identical just because of the randomness chance of when the errors occur in DNA, which there's different places that errors can occur. For one, just reading the DNA, there can be errors there, but then also when you're trying to match up with relatives, you're only looking at segments from one side of the family. So when they're trying to figure out these segments, they're looking at DNA markers, and at each spot, there's two markers, one from your mom, one from your dad. But they don't know which one's from your mom and which one's from your dad. So if the DNA is what's known as unphased, basically they can't decipher which side's mom's and which side's dad's because they haven't tested mom or dad, then they can come up with segments that are a mixture of your mom's inherited DNA and your dad's inherited DNA. And so the DNA can look identical with someone else because it's mixing up those parts, but then it's not really a match because once you phase it and you figure out, oh, actually these are from dad, these are from mom, then all of a sudden it lines up and then it's like, oh yeah, that wasn't a match. But that's not only a problem on your side, but it could also be a problem on your match's side. So it's even possible to have situations where you have two segments that are unphased segments matching each other, but then as soon as you phase both of those people's DNA, both of those segments all of a sudden change. But for false positives, it is not something that you're going to see with close matches. This is going to be something that you see with very distant matches where you're sharing less than 1% of your DNA, or if you're talking in centimorgans, you're probably sharing less than 70 centimorgans, probably even less than that. So for people that have these short DNA lists because you come from a population group that just isn't well represented in these databases, you'll probably get to page 4 or 5 and you'll start seeing a bunch of matches where it's just one shared segment that's maybe 20 centimorgans or 15 centimorgans or something low. And those are the matches where there's a high possibility that they're a false positive because the less DNA you're sharing, the higher possibility that that was just identical because of the chance that the DNA was read in the wrong way on one or both sides.
Next day, I went to work and I was working at a hospital at the time and I was doing a lot of wound care. We had a huge list of patients that needed their wounds redressed that day. And so it was just a really busy day. So I went to work and I all of a sudden kept getting these notifications from 23andMe in the messages section. And it was people saying, or these half siblings were saying, hey, welcome to the family, sis, like our long lost sister, welcome, hello. And I was like, what is going on? And I was messaging back to one of them and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I think this is an error because like you're not my siblings. I talked to my parents. They said they don't have any other children. And so they were responding like, oh, okay, well, you need to talk to your mom and dad because we're not going to tell you what the situation is. And so I called my mom while I was at work on break and I was like, you have to tell me what's going on right now because I am freaking out and I'm working with patients and I would rather have a clear head and know what's going on than to be wondering what's going on while I'm working with patients. She finally was like, you know what, Rachel, we do have something that we want to tell you, but now obviously is not the ideal time. We didn't want you to be at work. Your dad's not even home to have this conversation with you, but since you would like to know, then I'm going to tell you. We used a sperm donor for you and your sister, and these must be the other families that had children from the same donor. So I was like,
why would they not say that when they knew she was taking a DNA test? Now, I guess, to each their own, I don't want to judge the parents, everyone goes through their own stuff, but I don't know. I guess that for me, I find it surprising, especially when she's working in the medical field. I don't know if maybe at that time she wasn't working in OBGYN stuff, but maybe the parents just were like, well, cross our fingers, hope she doesn't really think that much about it. Or I guess maybe the parents just didn't realize how strong these DNA tests actually work, which seems to be a common thing that I've seen from people. But I don't know. I guess I kind of find that surprising. It's like, just tell her. So
like, okay, we will talk about this later. Thank you. And I'll see you at home. So I went home later and they sat down and explained more in depth kind of what had been going on with their health history and the issues that they had. And what I got from it was, yeah, my parents really, really wanted to have kids. They were so desperate to have a baby, and they wanted me and they wanted my sister so bad that they used a sperm donor. My whole life changed that day, and for the better. And there is so much more to this story. I will continue after I get a sip of water. On the app at the time, there were 4 siblings there, and we got connected with each other, obviously through messaging, and we exchanged numbers, and I was texting them, and then I got on the phone with one of them later that day, and she gave me the whole rundown. She gave me a whole story, their story, how they all know each other, because they're from different families, and their parents had actually used this website at the time. I don't know if it's still around, but you could put your donor number in, and it would connect you with other families with the same donor. And so they had a connection for a very long time. You're probably asking, why did your parents wait so long? I do not blame them. I can't imagine being in that position, being a parent, and you don't look at your child every day and be like, oh yeah, their paternal genes are from a sperm donor. No, you just don't. That is your baby, that's your child. And it doesn't matter because you love them unconditionally. It does not matter where they came from. So I had asked my parents, were you ever going to tell me this information? They were like, yeah, we were, but we never knew of a good time, and things would come up, and there was never a good time. And we didn't think about it all the time. And of course, I do not blame them at all. And to be completely honest, I'm really happy with the way that everything played out. I think it was supposed to be like this. At this point in time, there are 21 half siblings that we know of. My guess is that there are a lot more because a lot just keep coming out of the woodworks. And we know that our donor donated in a 3-year, I think, period of time. And so we're all very close in age. And there's about 8 of us that are very close. We have a group chat. We chat all the time. I see a few of them quite regularly because they're very close to me. And you guys, this has been the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. Although this has been the biggest change to my identity ever, because obviously I'm half Mexican, but no, I'm not German. I am not Italian. I am mainly Irish and British on the paternal side, and then I have the half Mexican on the other side. And this has made my life make so much more sense, and I feel like it was the missing puzzle piece to explain my life, my interests, how I am, how I act, and everything, because I feel personally that, that whole nature versus nurture, the nature, my genetics are very strong, because me with my half siblings that we have the same paternal genes, we are all so very similar. It is insane. It's insane. I mean, obviously we're all very close in age, but our personalities, the way we talk, our mannerisms, our interests, our taste buds, everything is so similar. It is mind-blowing. Whereas my sister and I, who has, she has the other sperm, she has a different sperm donor.
Okay, I was actually going to ask that if she knew whether or not they had the same father, but yeah.
We're very different. And that, I know like siblings can be very different, but I just think it's not coincidence that I think that genetics are just really strong. I don't know how else to say that. I'd always wanted to be a doctor, and my parents and family were just like, where is this coming from? Where is this passion coming from? Because I had never been exposed to it growing up. We have no doctors in the family. No one's been to college or anything like that. And so I had this weird drive and passion to become a doctor, and it came out of nowhere. Come to find out that my brother, I'm not going to call them half siblings because they're not. They're my brother's sisters. I love them so much. But anyways, my brother's a doctor. We have a nurse. We have a biochemical engineer. We have a pharmacist. And then we also have like videographers and photographers and these like artsy, talented singers, actresses. It's this amazing blend of science and arts, and it's so weird. I feel like I'm one of the intersections between the like medicine, science, and then the arts, like filming and stuff. What I don't want you to take away from this video is the idea that, oh, I will never be able to do this with my life because I don't have it in the cards for me. I don't have the genetics to do that. That's not true. I didn't know any of this information for majority of my life. I mean, until I was already accepted into medical school, then I finally found out this information. So yes, we do have a doctor in the family. We do have people who went to college and stuff like that, but I was already on this trajectory. I was already on the path to becoming a physician. And did my genetics help me get there? I don't know. I can't say that. I know that I didn't have the mentors or I wasn't raised in the environment to go and go to medical school and become a physician. It's a huge reason why I wanted to go into obstetrics and gynecology. It's interesting to see how everything played out. It's interesting to see how many similarities I have with my siblings and stuff like that. And like I said, this is my favorite part of me. I'm so proud to share this story.
Okay, so that was a okay video. Very interesting story. I think that this isn't too uncommon nowadays with DNA testing and people finding out these secrets. Half-sibling secret like this is certainly one of the ones that is probably the more jarring, especially I guess it'd be pretty crazy to, take a DNA test and all of a sudden your number of siblings just, multiplied immensely. I think the only thing that really surprises me is just that when she told her parents that she was going to take a DNA test and, hey, tell me now, they didn't say anything. That's the most surprising because, they said that they were waiting for a time to say, well, talk about the perfect time. So I guess, they ended up caving not too much longer later. But even once she first confronted them with the, hey, I have these half siblings, I guess I'm, a little surprised that they just didn't say, okay, well, we need to talk to you about something. Instead, they just kind of let it linger, and then she calls in the middle of her work all, hey, what's going on? This was definitely a very interesting story, and a lot of DNA stories certainly seem to do that. But if you'd like to see another DNA story where some family information was uncovered, be sure to check out this video right here. Thank you to our Patreon patrons and YouTube members.